The black luxury car rolled to a silent stop in front of the mansion, its engine humming softly before fading into the quiet of the late afternoon. The sun was still high, casting long golden shadows across the driveway, too early for him to be home. No one was expecting him. The millionaire sat in the back seat for a moment longer than necessary, staring at the house he had worked his entire life to build. For years, this place had been a symbol of success. Proof that sacrifice, long hours, and relentless ambition paid off. Yet lately, it had felt more like a hotel than a home. Still, today felt different. For the first time in a long while, he was returning early, without meetings, without calls, without excuses. He stepped out of the car, straightened his coat, and nodded politely to the driver, who looked slightly surprised. The front gates closed behind him with a soft metallic click. Everything was calm. Too calm. As he walked toward the door, a faint sound reached his ears. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then he stopped. Laughter. Not loud. Not carefree. Soft, fragile, almost cautious. It didn't belong to the usual rhythm of the house. His heart tightened. His children were away. His wife rarely laughed these days, not like that. He opened the door quietly. The scent of warm soup lingered in the air. The lights were dimmer than usual, and the house felt alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. He took one step forward, then another, curiosity slowly replacing the fatigue he carried home with him. Suddenly, footsteps hurried toward him. It was the maid. Her eyes widened the moment she saw him. Color drained from her face as if she'd seen a ghost. Before he could say a word, she rushed closer, hands trembling. "Sir," she whispered sharply, then stopped herself. She glanced behind her, then back at him. She pressed a finger to her lips. "Please," she whispered again, her voice shaking. "Stay quiet." The millionaire froze. In decades of power, boardrooms, and negotiations, no one had ever spoken to him like that. Not with fear. Not with urgency. His first instinct was irritation. This was his house. His rules. But something in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't disrespect. It was concern. "Why?" he asked quietly, barely moving his lips. The maid swallowed hard. Her hands clenched at the edges of her apron. "Please, sir," she said again, almost pleading now. "Just, don't make any noise." A strange chill ran through him. He followed her gaze down the hallway, toward a half-lit room where shadows moved gently against the wall. A soft cough echoed, small, weak, unmistakably human. In that moment, standing at the doorway of his own home, the millionaire realized something was happening inside these walls, something far more important than any deal he had ever closed. And whatever it was about to change him forever. The hallway felt longer than it ever had before. The millionaire followed the maid in silence, his footsteps careful, almost hesitant, as if the floor itself might betray him. The house he knew so well suddenly felt unfamiliar, every sound amplified, every shadow carrying weight. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from a strange sense of intrusion, as though he were walking into someone else's life. They stopped near the living room. The lights were low, softened by the fading afternoon sun. From behind a half-closed door came the quiet clink of a spoon against a bowl, followed by a gentle voice, his wife's voice, slow, patient, and tender in a way he hadn't heard in years. He leaned forward slightly. On the floor, his wife sat cross-legged on a folded blanket, her expensive clothes forgotten. In her hands was a small bowl of soup. Across from her sat a boy, no older than 8, wrapped in an oversized sweater that clearly did not belong to him. His hair was messy, his cheeks hollow, his skin pale. Each breath seemed like effort. The boy coughed softly. His wife immediately paused, placing a steadying hand on the child's back. "It's okay," she whispered. Slowly. "You're safe." The millionaire's chest tightened. This was not a scene of betrayal or deception. This was something far more unsettling. Because it revealed a truth he had never noticed. He turned slowly to the maid, his voice barely audible. "Who Is he? The maid hesitated, then spoke in a whisper thick with emotion. She found him near the old bus station last night, sir. He was lying on the pavement. Feverish. Alone. People were walking past him like he wasn't there. The millionaire's mind struggled to catch up. Why didn't you call the authorities? Or a hospital? His wife looked up then. Their eyes met. There was no defensiveness in her gaze, only quiet resolve. He was scared, she said gently. Every time someone in uniform came near, he cried. He kept asking if he'd be sent away. The boy looked up at the stranger now, the tall man in an expensive coat. His small fingers tightened around the edge of the blanket. Fear flickered across his face. Instinctively, the millionaire lowered himself slightly, removing his jacket. Hey, he said softly, surprising himself with the warmth in his voice. I'm not here to hurt you. The child didn't speak. He only watched. He has no family we could find, the maid continued. Just a name, sir. Daniel. Daniel. A name. Not a statistic. Not a problem to solve. The millionaire felt something crack inside him. He had funded shelters. Signed checks. Attended charity dinners. Yet this child, shivering on his living room floor, had never crossed his path. Until now. His wife gently placed the bowl down. I didn't want to wake you, she said quietly. You had such an important trip. I thought I'd handle it. He looked around the room at the blankets, the soup, the makeshift care, and then at his wife. For the first time in years, he truly saw her. Not as the woman waiting at home, but as someone who had quietly been living a deeper truth than he ever had. And in that moment, the millionaire understood something that shook him to his core. Real wealth was sitting right in front of him, and he had almost walked past it. The room fell into a fragile silence. No one spoke, yet everything felt painfully loud, the ticking of a distant clock, the shallow rhythm of the child's breathing, the weight of thoughts crashing inside the millionaire's mind. He stood there, unmoving, as if stepping any further might shatter something delicate and irreversible. For years, his life had been measured in numbers. Profits. Percentages. Growth charts. Success had always been loud, celebrated with applause, contracts, and flashing cameras. Yet here, in the quiet corner of his own home, something far more powerful was unfolding without witnesses. He watched his wife gently tuck the blanket around Daniel's shoulders. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as though the world had narrowed to just this moment. The maid stood nearby, hands clasped, eyes filled with a mixture of worry and hope. And then the realization hit him. Sharp and undeniable. He had been absent. Not physically, perhaps. His name was on the house, the cars, the accounts. But his presence, his attention, his humanity had been invested elsewhere. He had believed providing wealth was the same as providing care. Standing there now, he understood how wrong he had been. His gaze drifted to Daniel. The boy's eyes followed every movement in the room, alert, guarded, as if he had learned early that safety never lasted. That look pierced the millionaire more deeply than any business failure ever had. This child had learned to survive in a world where kindness was rare and temporary. How long have you been on the streets? He asked gently. Daniel hesitated. Then he shrugged. A long time, he whispered. The answer was small, but it carried a lifetime of loss. The millionaire swallowed hard. He felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest, a pressure that refused to fade. For a fleeting moment, he considered stepping back, letting professionals handle it. Writing a check. Making a call. It would be easy. But easy was what had kept him distant all these years. He remembered the charity dinners, the speeches about hope, the applause after generous donations. He remembered shaking hands and posing for photos, believing he had done his part. Yet no photograph had ever captured this feeling. He slowly knelt down so he was eye level with Daniel. The expensive watch on his wrist suddenly felt heavy, out of place. "You don't have to be afraid here," he said softly. "No one will make you leave." Daniel studied his face carefully, searching for truth. The millionaire held his gaze, resisting the urge to look away. This was not a negotiation. This was a promise. Something shifted inside him then. He turned to his wife. Their eyes met again. This time, he saw exhaustion there, but also strength. She had carried this compassion alone, quietly, without asking for permission or praise. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Not just for today, but for years." She smiled faintly, not in judgment, but in understanding. At that moment, the millionaire knew this was the crossroads of his life. He could return to the world where generosity was convenient and distant, or he could stay right here, where compassion required presence, patience, and courage. As Daniel leaned back against the cushion, finally relaxing, the choice became clear. This was the moment of truth. And he was ready to listen to his heart. For the first time, the cough came suddenly, sharp, deep, and frightening. Daniel's small body tensed as he struggled for air, his face tightening in pain. The room that had felt calm just moments ago filled with urgency. The bowl of soup tipped slightly, spilling onto the floor, forgotten. The millionaire moved before anyone else could react. He crossed the room in 2 quick steps and knelt beside the boy, placing a steady hand on his back. Daniel's breathing was shallow, uneven. Panic flickered in his eyes. "It's okay," the man said, his voice low and firm. "I've got you." The words surprised even him. He had never spoken like this, not with such certainty, not with such care. "Get the car," he said, looking up at the maid. There was no hesitation in his voice this time. No discussion. Just action. Within minutes, they were moving. The late afternoon light blurred past the windows as the car sped through familiar streets that suddenly felt different, less important than the fragile life resting in the back seat. The millionaire sat beside Daniel, holding him gently, whispering reassurance with every labored breath. For the first time in decades, his phone remained untouched in his pocket. At the hospital, bright lights and hurried footsteps replaced the quiet of the house. Nurses moved quickly, lifting Daniel onto a gurney. The millionaire instinctively reached for the boy's hand, and Daniel didn't pull away. "Please," the man said to the doctor, his voice strained. "Do whatever you need." Hours passed. The millionaire sat in a hard plastic chair, his suit wrinkled, his tie loosened. The world he knew, deadlines, deals, pressure, felt distant and meaningless. Every few minutes, he looked up, hoping for news, replaying the boy's cough in his mind. His wife sat beside him, silent. He reached for her hand. This time, she squeezed back. When the doctor finally returned, his expression softened. "He's stable," he said. "Severe infection. Malnutrition. But he'll be okay, with care." The millionaire closed his eyes, releasing a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Relief washed over him, heavy and overwhelming. Later that night, Daniel slept peacefully, machines humming softly beside the bed. The millionaire sat close, watching the rise and fall of the boy's chest. He thought of the many nights he had slept in luxury hotels, surrounded by comfort, yet never feeling truly at rest. This quiet moment was different. He brushed a strand of hair from Daniel's forehead. "You're safe now," he whispered, more to himself than to the child. In that hospital room, stripped of titles and status, the millionaire finally understood the weight of responsibility that came with his privilege. Wealth was not meant to build walls, it was meant to build bridges. When dawn began to color the sky, he made a decision that would change everything. This was no longer about charity. This was about commitment. And for the first time, he was ready to give something far more valuable than money, his presence. Spring arrived quietly that year. Sunlight filled the house once again, but this time it felt different, warmer, more alive. Laughter echoed through the halls, not soft and cautious like before, but free and unafraid. Daniel's laughter. He ran through the living room now, healthy and strong, his once fragile body full of energy. His cheeks were flushed with color, his eyes bright with curiosity. The blanket that had once wrapped him like a shield now lay folded in a drawer, no longer needed. The millionaire watched from the doorway, a gentle smile resting on his face. Life had changed in ways no balance sheet could measure. Daniel had started school. Every morning, the millionaire helped him tie his shoes, listening patiently as the boy talked about spelling tests, new friends, and dreams of becoming a doctor. "So I can help kids like me," he said once, with a proud grin. Those words stayed with the man. The mansion no longer felt like a monument to success. It felt like a home. Dinners were shared. Conversations lingered. Phones were set aside. Time, once treated as currency, was now given freely. The millionaire had made quiet changes too. He no longer announced his generosity or posed for photographs. He funded clinics anonymously. He supported shelters without his name on the wall. He visited them instead, listening, learning, remembering faces. But his greatest investment was closer than ever. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel sat beside him on the porch steps. "Why did you help me?" the boy asked suddenly. The millionaire paused. He thought about the deals he had closed, the trophies on his shelves, the applause he once chased. None of it felt like the right answer. "Because someone once helped me," he said finally. "And I forgot what that felt like until you reminded me." Daniel leaned against him, comfortable, safe. Inside, his wife watched them through the window, tears in her eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude. She had always known the man he could be. All he needed was a moment of truth to find his way back. Years later, people would still call him successful. But those closest to him knew better. He had discovered a richer life, one built on presence, compassion, and quiet courage. And if you asked him now what wealth truly meant, he would tell you this. It's not what you accumulate. It's who you lift when no one is watching. It's the lives you change, not with grand gestures, but with open hands and an open heart. As night fell and the porch light glowed softly, the millionaire felt something he had spent his entire life searching for. Not pride. Not power. Peace. And that was worth more than everything he had ever owned.